My name is Haley. I'm 28 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I'm learning how dangerous silence can be. Because for years, I stayed quiet. I said yes. I swallowed the resentment. I played the role of the easy daughter. The reliable one. The one who never needed help. Who paid her own way through school. Who picked up the tab at dinner without being asked. Who smiled when her name was left off the family Christmas card because you work so much, you're barely around. And I kept telling myself that's what being strong meant. Until the day my parents decided that strength wasn't something to admire, it was something to take advantage of. It started with a phone call. I was in the middle of prepping for a quarterly meeting at the architecture firm where I'd just been promoted to associate. My desk was covered in models, project plans, client folders. The kind of chaos that made me feel alive. Then my phone buzzed. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail. She never called during work hours unless something was wrong. I answered. Hi, honey, she said in her sing-song voice, the one she uses when she's trying to sound casual but already wants something. Do you have a second? Not really, I said honestly, clicking through an AutoCAD file. Big meeting coming up. What's up? A pause. Then, it's about your sister. Of course. It's always about my sister. Samantha, 2 years younger than me, newly married, newly a mom, recently unemployed after a failed business and still living in the house my parents helped her and her husband buy. What about her? I asked, trying not to sigh. Well, they're a little behind on the mortgage. Just a couple months. But the baby's teething and she's been so stressed in. Mom, I cut in, I'm not her bank. Silence. Not offended silence. Just the kind that waits, knowing the ask is still coming. I'm not saying forever, she said. Just, maybe 6 months of payments? Just until she gets back on her feet. I stared at my monitor. Do you know how much that is? Only about $2,300 a month. So, like $14,000? Only. I laughed. Haley, my mom said sharply, you make good money. You're not struggling. Why wouldn't you help family? Because I didn't buy a house I couldn't afford. Because I didn't blow through savings on spa days and baby shower balloons. Because I spent my 20s working, not depending on someone else. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, no. And I meant it. For the first time, I drew a line. And I didn't apologize for it. My mom hung up not long after, barely masking the disappointment. And that should have been the end of it. But 3 days later, I got a certified letter at my apartment. A legal notice. From my parents. A civil suit. They were claiming that I had verbally agreed to assist with my sister's mortgage and had failed to honor a family contract that resulted in emotional and financial damages. The amount? $400,000. I stared at the paper for 10 minutes before my knees gave out. I wasn't just stunned. I was gutted. This wasn't just about money. This was war. The days that followed were a blur. Calls with lawyers. Texts from extended relatives I hadn't spoken to in years asking, is it true? Are you really suing your parents? As if I was the one who'd started it. Samantha, of course, stayed quiet. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just Instagram stories of her and her husband baking cookies and trying to keep the stress away with family fun. I felt like I was watching my whole family throw me overboard. And the worst part? A small part of me still hoped they'd come to their senses. That I'd get a call from my dad, gruff and awkward, saying, it's gone too far, let's fix it. But that call never came. Instead, I got served again. They had added emotional distress to the claim. My own mother, the woman who used to braid my hair for picture day, was now testifying that my refusal to help my sister had caused irreparable harm to the family. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized. This wasn't new. It wasn't even really about the mortgage. This was about decades of being treated like a tool. I was never the favorite. I was the functional. Need a babysitter? Ask Haley. Need to borrow money for a quick thing? Haley's got it. Need someone to calm down Samantha after another tantrum? Send in Haley. She's patient. But the second I stopped giving, I became the enemy. It made me sick. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted space. Dignity. Peace. But my parents didn't want peace. They wanted compliance. And I wasn't giving it anymore. So I lawyered up. I told my attorney everything, every detail from the phone call to the suit. He listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me. This isn't about contracts. It's about control. And he was right. It always had been. The hearing was scheduled for 2 months later. In the meantime, my firm stood behind me. My boss even gave me time off to prepare and process. But nothing really prepared me for what came next. Because just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Samantha finally spoke up. She posted a long, self-pitying message online about family betrayal, claiming I had promised to support her as a mother and had abandoned them in their time of need. She even included baby photos. And worst of all, the post went viral. Not millions of views viral, but enough. Enough that local media picked it up. Enough that clients at my firm started asking questions. Enough that I couldn't go a day without seeing someone else's judgment in my inbox. People I didn't know, didn't owe anything to, were suddenly weighing in on my morality. As if choosing not to pay someone else's mortgage made me heartless. As if having boundaries was cruelty. I remember sitting on my apartment floor, watching the likes climb on her post, thinking, this is what happens when you stop being useful. They turn on you. Even if they share your blood. Even if they once kissed your scraped knees and called you brave. I realized then, this story wouldn't end with an apology. It would end with a decision. And this time, I'd be the one making it. The first time I walk into the lawyer's office, I'm still hoping it's all just some bizarre mistake. That maybe my parents panicked and filed something out of spite, that they'll back down once it gets real. I'm wrong. My attorney, a calm, gray-haired woman named Denise, closes the door behind me and lays out the folder with the case documents. She doesn't sugarcoat it. They're not just trying to scare you, Haley. They filed the claim intentionally. There's strategy here. She shows me the highlights. The claim of familial obligation, the fabricated verbal agreement, even an alleged text I apparently sent confirming I'd take care of it. I frown. That's not real. Denise nods. It's not uncommon in family cases. People twist words. Screenshots get edited. Context gets lost. She slides the file back toward me and leans in. Now here's the good news. This case is weak. Legally, they don't have a leg to stand on. You never signed anything. There's no binding agreement. So I'm safe. You're safe in court, she says gently. But emotionally? That's going to be the hard part. She's right again. Because as word spreads, the cracks in my extended family grow into trenches. A few cousins reach out privately. This is insane. I'm so sorry. We're with you. But most? They stay silent. Or worse, they repost Samantha's passive-aggressive updates about people who only pretend to care. It's like watching my childhood get rewritten in real time. And Samantha? She's thriving on it. Posting inspirational quotes. Hashtags like #MomStrong and #ProtectOurHome. There's one photo in particular that breaks me. It's a picture of her standing in front of her house, holding her baby, with the caption, "This is what we're fighting for. A roof over our daughter's head." Some people forgot what love looks like. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. People offering to Venmo her. Strangers bashing me in the comments, calling me greedy, heartless, spoiled. They don't know me. They don't know how I worked 2 jobs through college while Samantha got bailed out of 3 failed businesses. They don't know I used to transfer money to our parents every December just to help them make Christmas happen. They don't know that the reason I have money now is because I never stopped grinding, never asked for help, and never, not once, put my burden on someone else. But none of that matters now. Because online, perception wins. And I've already lost the vote. My boss pulls me into her office one afternoon, gently closing the door behind her. I already know what's coming. She sighs. I support you, Haley. You know that. But this whole thing, the optics are getting loud. She's kind measured. But there's a line under her words. A warning. The firm has high-profile clients. Big contracts. Reputations to protect. And, suddenly, I'm not just the golden associate anymore. I'm the woman being sued by her own family. It's humiliating. But it also lights a fire in me. I go home that night and open a blank document. I start typing. Not a social media response. Not a press statement. Just the truth. I write everything. I write about growing up in a house where love had conditions, where being useful earned praise and saying no earned punishment. I write about my sister, who never heard the word no, and how that entitlement became a disease that infected the entire family. I write about boundaries, about survival, about what it means to finally choose yourself, even when the people who raised you call it betrayal. I don't post it. Not yet. But it feels like armor. Like the first swing in a battle I never wanted but now refuse to lose. The pretrial meeting is scheduled 2 weeks later. It's surreal. I sit across a long table from my own parents and sister. We're not in a courtroom, just a conference room with beige walls and dry air, but it feels colder than any courtroom ever could. My mom won't look at me. My dad looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. And Samantha? She looks smug. Like this whole thing is an inconvenience to her, something she believes she deserves to win because she's already painted herself as the victim. Their lawyer, a thin, sharp-tongued man in a navy suit, leans forward. "We're offering a settlement," he says. Denise looks at me, then back at him. "Let's hear it." He slides a paper across the table. $200,000. Paid directly to the mortgage servicer. In exchange, we withdraw the suit and agree not to make any further defamatory statements about Miss Myers. I laugh. Actually laugh. Out loud. Defamatory? I say. You mean like claiming I promised to pay something I never agreed to? Or blasting me online to thousands of strangers? The lawyer doesn't blink. It's a generous offer considering the emotional trauma involved. I look at my parents. They're silent. They're letting this man speak for them like I'm a stranger. And maybe I am now. I push the paper back. No. Denise nods firmly beside me. The answer is no. Samantha scoffs. So you're just going to let us drown? I turn to her. And for the first time, I speak directly to the version of her that lives in my nightmares, the manipulator, the entitled princess, the girl who weaponized her own mess to destroy mine. No, Samantha, I say. You're not drowning. You're finally learning to swim without someone holding you up. She glares at me, eyes wide with mock hurt. But I don't flinch. Not anymore. Because I see her clearly now. I see all of them. And I'm done. After the meeting, Denise and I walk out into the bright sunlight. The sky is cloudless, the heat buzzing around us. They're not going to back down, I say. No, she agrees. But you're not backing down either. I nod. And I realize something in that moment. This isn't just about a lawsuit anymore. This is about reclaiming the story. For years, they told me who I was supposed to be, the helper, the provider, the fixer. Now, I'm writing my own version. One boundary at a time. And I won't apologize for any of it. Not now. Not ever again. They don't stop. That's what stuns me most. After the settlement offer fails, after they see me stand my ground with a lawyer by my side and a voice they've never heard me use before, they still don't stop. Instead, it escalates. Within days, Samantha posts another tear-filled video online. She says things like, "I never asked for much. I just wanted to keep a roof over my baby's head." She never names me, of course, but she doesn't have to. The internet already knows who I am. The rich sister. The cold one. The one who chose money over family. And suddenly, people I've never met are tagging me in hate comments. You'll regret this when your niece grows up and hates you. If you have $400,000 sitting around, you could at least pretend to care. Hope karma finds you. I stop reading after the one that says, "You're just mad your parents love her more." Because it's not the hate that gets to me. It's the truth under that one. They did love her more. Or maybe not more, but louder. More openly. More unconditionally. And I don't know what hurts more, realizing it was true, or realizing how long I let it slide just to keep the peace. Denise calls me one morning as I'm walking into the firm. They filed an amendment to the suit, she says flatly. I pause mid-step. What now? They're claiming defamation. Saying the private statements you've made to coworkers and friends have damaged Samantha's public reputation and caused emotional harm. I actually stop walking. They're suing me for talking? They're grasping, she replies. But grasping doesn't mean harmless. We need to be strategic now. I hang up and walk straight past the front desk. Straight into the conference room I booked for the morning. I was supposed to present a design pitch to a new commercial client. Instead, I sit there in the silence of the empty room and wonder how I got here. I used to be proud of being the responsible one. Now I'm the one everyone whispers about in the break room. I rest my elbows on the table, bury my face in my hands. And for the first time since this whole thing began, I cry. Not because I feel weak, but because I'm exhausted from pretending I don't. Later that week, I get a message from my aunt, my mom's sister. We've never been especially close, but she's always been decent, polite, quiet. Until now. Her message is short. I think you should see this. I'm sorry. Attached is a screenshot. A private family group chat I was conveniently never added to. The thread goes on for pages. Comments from cousins, distant uncles, even Samantha's in-laws. Calling me arrogant. Saying I was always full of myself. That I wouldn't even be successful without all the sacrifices my parents made. Then I see a message from my mother. We raised a daughter who forgot where she came from. Maybe this will remind her. I stop breathing for a second. Because that confirms everything I'd tried not to believe. They didn't just disagree with me. They resented me. They wanted to break me. And they thought this lawsuit would do it. I start documenting everything. Every message. Every post. Every conversation. I make a folder on my laptop labeled Protection. I stop hoping for reconciliation and start preparing for war. But something unexpected happens. One night, I get a DM from someone I don't recognize, a woman in her late 30s named Maya. I almost ignore it. But then I see the message. I saw your story. I know what it's like. My sister did the same thing to me. My parents backed her. I was cast out for saying no. Just wanted to say, you're not alone. I stare at it for a long time. Then I reply, thank you. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. And she writes back, you don't owe anyone your peace of mind, Haley. Especially not people who only value what you give, not who you are. Something in me breaks open after that. Not in a bad way. In the kind of way that finally lets fresh air in. Denise and I meet again. This time, we're not just playing defense. This isn't just emotional, she tells me. It's reputational. The internet doesn't forget, and you're building a career with public clients. If they want to push this narrative, we have two options: stay silent or push back. I hesitate. What does pushback look like? She smiles. A countersuit. I blink. You want to sue them? No, she says simply. You get to decide. I'm just saying, you have a case. I go home and sit with that. Not with the idea of revenge, but with the idea of reclaiming my voice. They painted me as a villain because I didn't bankroll someone else's mess. They sued me because I had the audacity to say no. But maybe it's time the truth stopped living in silence. Maybe it's time I speak up. I call a friend, one of the very few I trust. She works in PR and crisis media. She's helped political clients, authors, startups, and she listens carefully as I explain what's been happening. Then she says, do you want the world to know your story? I pause. And then I say yes. But I want it told right. So we work together. We write a full piece, a first-person op-ed, titled, When Saying No to Family Costs You Everything. In it, I don't drag them. I don't name names. I don't air the dirtiest laundry. I just tell the truth. About how toxic loyalty gets disguised as love. About how some families only value you when you're giving. About how choosing peace sometimes means losing people who never saw you as a person, only a provider. We submit it to 3 major publications. 2 pass. 1 accepts. Within 24 hours of it going live, my inbox explodes. But this time, not with hate. With thank yous. From other daughters, other sisters, other silent givers who finally heard their story reflected back at them. The comment that gets me most is from someone anonymous. You reminded me I don't have to destroy myself to be good. Thank you. And that's when I know. No matter what comes next, I've already won something they never expected me to win. The narrative. They sued me for $400,000. But they didn't realize I'd come out of it with something more valuable. a voice. And now? I plan to use it. When the op-ed goes live, I'm terrified. Not just because I've shared my story, but because I've taken control of it. I've broken the one unspoken rule my family held me to for most of my life. Don't talk about what happens behind closed doors. That rule was never written down. It was carved into glances across the dinner table, into quick, "we don't need to tell people that" statements, into the suffocating silence that followed every fight. And now I've broken it publicly. So I brace myself. I expect backlash. From strangers. From relatives. From my parents. What I don't expect is how much support comes first. Messages from women across the country. Women who had their paychecks hijacked to fund their brother's rehab. Women who paid their parents' rent while being called ungrateful. Women who said no and lost everyone for it. I read every single message. And I realized this was never just about my story. This is about a pattern that so many of us have lived in silence. It's not just emotional abuse. It's financial manipulation dressed as family duty. And it's everywhere. My firm calls me in the day after the op-ed explodes. Not for disciplinary action. For something else. My boss, Marla, closes the office door and folds her arms. "I read it," she says. My stomach clenches. She pauses for a beat. Then, "It was one of the most honest, impactful things I've read in years." I exhale slowly. She smiles. "Look, we've been quiet about the case because we didn't want to step on anything legal. But after reading that, I just want you to know we've got your back." I blink. You're not the only one in this office who's had to deal with family strings. It hits me then, how much I've underestimated the power of being seen. Because for years, I was useful, efficient, dependable, but not seen. Now, I am. Not just by strangers. By people who matter. And that changes something in me. It strengthens the voice I've only just started using. Denise calls later that evening. "We need to talk about the next move," she says. I know what she's talking about, the countersuit. It's been sitting quietly in the corner of our legal strategy, something she filed as a precaution in case things escalated. Now, it's time to decide whether to push it forward. They're still pursuing the $400,000, she reminds me. No retraction. No apology. And the defamation claims they added are flimsy, but damaging. I sit on my couch with a mug of tea, phone pressed to my ear. "I don't want revenge," I say softly. "I just want it to stop." Denise pauses. "Then we make it stop. On your terms." I glance across my apartment. At the quiet. The peace I built without them. And I realize. They took a shot at burning that peace down. And I'm not going to sit here and let them win just because I'm scared to fight back. "Let's move forward," I say. She doesn't ask me again. 2 weeks later, Samantha calls me directly. Her number pops up on my phone just after midnight on a Thursday. I almost don't answer. But something makes me swipe. She doesn't say hello. She just says, "Why are you doing this?" And I let the silence hang. Because I'm not the one who filed a lawsuit. I'm not the one who lied on a public platform. I'm not the one who tried to weaponize the court system to force someone into paying a debt they never agreed to carry. She breaks the silence. "I'm a mother, Haley. I was just trying to survive." I sit up straighter. "And I'm a daughter. Who is trying to protect her boundaries." She scoffs. "So now you're the victim?" "No," I say, calm. "I'm the one who finally stopped playing along." She doesn't respond. Then she says, "You're going to ruin everything." They're so angry. "You could destroy this family." I swallow hard. "That's not my job anymore," I say. "To protect people from consequences." "You were always the one who fixed things," she says bitterly. "I was," I reply. "But not anymore." Then I hang up. And I cry. Not because I regret it. But because I don't. And that still feels foreign. Denise updates me weekly. The countersuit is strong. She's gathered documentation, screenshots, timelines, messages, everything that shows a clear campaign of defamation, emotional harm, and financial pressure. We're not seeking $400,000. We're seeking an apology. And a court order that bars them from contacting me again. It sounds cold. But when someone uses access to you as a weapon, cutting access is the protection. I don't hear from my parents again directly. They go quiet. Too quiet. And that's how I know the countersuit hit where it hurts. Not in their wallets, but in their control. They can't spin the story anymore. They can't paint me as cruel. Not when the evidence is in front of a judge. Not when the world has seen my side. The court date arrives. I wear a navy suit. My hair is tied back. I sit beside Denise and watch as the people who raised me sit at the opposite table and pretend I'm a stranger. They don't meet my eyes. My mother dabs her eyes with a tissue, a performance she's perfected over years. My father stares at the floor like the answers are hidden in the carpet. Samantha stares ahead, unblinking. The judge listens, takes everything in, reviews every piece of evidence. It doesn't take long. The defamation claims they filed? Dismissed. The emotional harm and financial harassment they caused? Upheld. The judge doesn't order them to pay me money. But he does order a permanent no-contact agreement. And more importantly, he rules that there was no obligation, verbal or written, for me to pay my sister's mortgage. He calls their case a misuse of the legal system rooted in entitlement and emotional coercion. I don't cheer. I don't smile. I just breathe. Deeply. For the first time in months. Maybe years. Because it's finally over. I leave the courtroom alone. No crowd. No cameras. Just me. And as I walk down the courthouse steps, I realize something that makes my throat tighten. I'm free. Not just legally. Emotionally. No more manipulation disguised as love. No more guilt masked as tradition. No more being the good daughter in a family that only showed love through what I could provide. Now, I write the rules. And this time, my peace is non-negotiable. The silence that follows is different. It's not the heavy silence I used to feel growing up, the kind that settled after every argument, full of unspoken rules and emotional debris. This silence is lighter, cleaner, like a room finally aired out after years of being sealed. I don't realize how much of my life was lived bracing for the next obligation until there's suddenly nothing. No middle-of-the-night guilt calls. No vague texts from my mom trying to guilt me into being the bigger person. No family group chats demanding explanations. Just quiet. And for the first time, I don't miss the noise. I still get the occasional message, distant relatives wanting to reconnect or hear my side. I don't respond to most of them. I've learned that not every olive branch is genuine, and not every conversation is owed a reply. But I do get one message that makes me pause. It's from my cousin Talia. She was always the quiet one at family gatherings, the one who stuck to the corners and played piano during dessert, while the louder cousins dominated the living room. We haven't spoken in over a decade. Her message is simple. I just wanted you to know what you did. It gave me the courage to leave my parents' house. I'm finally in therapy. Thank you. I stare at the screen for a long time. And I reply, I'm proud of you. Because that's what this is about now. Not revenge. Not proving anyone wrong. But giving other people permission to protect their peace, even when it comes at the cost of blood ties. My career moves forward like nothing happened. Actually, no. That's not true. It moves forward stronger. The op-ed gained more traction than I expected. I'm invited to speak at a panel on financial independence and family boundaries. A podcast host emails me, asking if I'd be willing to talk about the emotional cost of being the responsible one. I say yes to the podcast. At first, I think I'll be nervous, vulnerable, but the words flow naturally. I talk about how being the strong one in the family often means no one checks if you're okay. How emotional labor is invisible until you stop doing it and everyone suddenly calls you selfish. How boundaries don't destroy relationships, they just expose the ones that were already transactional. The episode gets thousands of plays. The comment section fills with stories from women just like me. And I realized something. My story didn't just free me. It gave other people the language to fight for themselves. Samantha never apologizes. That's something I've had to let go of, the hope for a moment of clarity where she realizes what she did. She won't. She's built her identity on the idea that she's the victim. That I turned on the family. That I was always cold and ambitious and distant. Fine. Let her think that. Let her live in a house she nearly lost, still pretending the mortgage monster was her sister's fault. Meanwhile, I move forward. I get promoted again. This time, to lead architect on a sustainability project for a major downtown development. It's the kind of opportunity one used to dream about. And for once, I don't feel guilty about it. I don't worry about who's going to ask for a cut. Who's going to make me feel bad for shining? Who's going to show up with another small favor disguised as obligation? Because I've closed that door. And if they try again, they'll find it locked with my name on the deed. I go back to my childhood neighborhood one afternoon. Not for them. For me. I park a few blocks from the old house. The streets are smaller than I remember. The trees thinner. It's strange how the place that shaped so much of me feels foreign now. I walk past the house. No one's outside. The windows are closed. The lawn's uncut. It looks tired, like the energy of pretending finally wore it down. I don't linger. I don't knock. I just look once. And I leave. Because I don't need closure anymore. I've already written the ending. And I'm already living in the sequel. Back at home, I hang a new framed piece above my desk. It's a quote I found scribbled in an old journal from college, one I wrote after Samantha borrowed money, just this once, and never paid it back. It reads, "You don't owe anyone your piece just because they gave you your name." It feels different now. Heavier. Wiser. And true. So many of us grow up believing that family is automatic. That blood earns loyalty. That forgiveness is the default, even when harm is repeated. But I've learned that family is a choice. And the most important one you'll ever make is choosing yourself. Not out of spite, but out of survival. Out of love. Out of truth. There are still days I feel sad. Sometimes I think about birthdays, holidays, future weddings. Moments where they won't be there. But then I remember. They weren't really there anyway. They were present when I was useful. When I was quiet. When I didn't cost them anything. But now, I've cost them their power. And for that, they call me ungrateful. Let them. Because gratitude doesn't mean servitude. And love, real love, doesn't come with a price tag or a mortgage attached. It's quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that means people are holding back. Not the suffocating stillness that used to fill the room when my parents were angry. No, this silence is something else entirely. This silence is mine. And it feels peaceful. That's how I know I've healed more than I realized. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for the next emotional ambush. I'm not wondering what obligation is around the corner or what guilt trip will come wrapped in a phone call. I've stopped bracing. And I've started living. It's a Sunday afternoon when I get the call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it. But something tells me to pick up. "Haley," the voice says. It takes me a moment to place it. It's my father. I haven't heard from him since the court ruling. He's the one who stayed mostly quiet through the whole ordeal. Never reached out. Never defended me. Never stopped it. "What do you want?" I ask. Calm. Even. I wanted to talk. Just talk. "Now you want to talk?" He exhales slowly. "Your mother's not doing well. The stress has caught up with her. She's not sleeping. She barely eats." I wait. Because I know what's coming. "I think she regrets it," he continues. "The lawsuit. Everything." She won't say it out loud, but I see it. Silence. Then he adds, "Maybe you could come visit. Just for a day." I close my eyes. Not out of emotion. Out of sheer disbelief. "You really think I'd walk back into that house?" I say. "After everything?" "I'm not saying forgive us," he says quickly. "Just give her peace of mind. For closure." That word. Closure. They always want my peace to be the sacrifice for theirs. I almost say no. I want to say no. But instead, I say, "Let me think about it." He thanks me. Asks how I've been. And I keep my answer short. When we hang up, I sit in the silence again. Only this time, it's not peaceful. It's conflicted. Because I don't owe them anything. But a small part of me still wonders if I'm capable of grace, not for them, but for myself. I ask Denise what she thinks. She pauses, then says, "It depends. What would you gain by going back?" "I don't know," I admit. "Maybe nothing. Maybe closure. But real closure. Not the kind they want." She nods. Then go. But not for them. For you. So I do. I drive to the house on a gray Thursday afternoon. The clouds are heavy low. The air feels like it's holding something back, maybe a storm. Maybe a scream. The neighborhood looks smaller than it did in my memory. The house hasn't changed much. Same dull paint. Same cracked driveway. Same porch swing that creaks if the wind touches it wrong. I park across the street. My hands rest on the steering wheel longer than they should. Then I get out. I knock on the door. My father opens it. He looks older than I remember. His posture is heavier. His eyes carry something I can't name. Maybe guilt. Maybe regret. Maybe just time. Thank you for coming, he says. I nod, but don't smile. Inside, the house smells like cinnamon and old carpet. And there, on the couch, is my mother. She looks thinner. Paler. A little frail, like someone who's been carrying invisible weights. Her eyes widen when she sees me. She starts to speak, but her voice cracks. I sit across from her. I don't offer a hug. I just wait. Finally, she says, I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. Silence. Then I don't expect forgiveness. I know. But I wanted you to know. I was wrong. We were wrong. She looks down at her hands, folded tightly in her lap. I was angry that you said no. I didn't know how to handle it. I took that anger and turned it into something monstrous. I say nothing, because this isn't a conversation. This is a confession. And I've earned the right to let it sit. I don't expect a relationship, she whispers. But I do want you to know that I'm sorry. I see it now, how unfair it was. What we did. What I let Samantha do. What we let ourselves become. I nod. Thank you, I say quietly. She looks surprised. But I don't mean it for her. I mean it for me. Because I never thought I'd get even a fragment of this, an ounce of acknowledgement, however late and broken. And while it doesn't fix anything, it softens something inside me I didn't realize was still hard. We talk for a few more minutes. She asks about my job. I give simple answers. No detail. No opening. And when I stand to leave, she doesn't try to hug me. But she does say, you deserved better. I look her in the eye. And I say yes. I did. Driving home, I don't cry. I thought I would. But I feel lighter. Not because I forgave them. But because I finally believed that I didn't cause any of it. That's what I'd carried the longest, the idea that if I'd just been nicer, quieter, more patient, less independent, they wouldn't have turned on me. But no. Their betrayal was a choice. Their entitlement was a habit. And my refusal to play along? That was my first act of self-love. Back in my apartment, I make tea. I sit on my couch, legs tucked under me, phone face down. And for the first time in months, I allow myself to imagine a future that has nothing to do with repairing what they broke. A future that is not defined by what I escaped, but by what I'm building. Friendships built on reciprocity. A career that doesn't drain my soul. A life that is soft where theirs was sharp. I still don't talk to Samantha. And I probably never will. Some relationships are not frozen in time, they're severed by it. And that's okay. I'm not broken by it. I'm just done with it. I open a new document. A fresh title. What saying no gave me back. Because it's not about what I lost anymore. It's about what I finally claimed. My peace. My power. My voice. And none of it is up for sale. Not now. Not ever again. Healing is strange. It doesn't come in a straight line. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets or arrive all at once like a door swinging open. Sometimes, healing sneaks in through the quiet, through the mornings when you don't feel dread, through the nights you sleep without grinding your teeth, through the simple fact that when the phone rings, you no longer brace yourself for war. That's how I know I'm healing. Not because everything is perfect, but because I no longer feel broken. A year has passed. A whole year since the lawsuit, since the op-ed, since the countersuit that set the record straight. The world didn't fall apart. My career didn't crumble. The sky didn't cave in because I said no. In fact, things bloomed. I've since published 3 essays on family, boundaries, and financial independence, all of them well received. I was interviewed on a national podcast. I've spoken to women in private support circles, colleges, even a few quiet HR departments about the emotional cost of being the responsible daughter. People often ask me what I'd tell someone going through something similar. Here's what I always say. If the price of love is silence and self-sacrifice, it's not love. It's leverage. That lesson took me 28 years to learn. But I'll never forget it now. I no longer live in the same apartment. I moved last spring into a new place, one with floor-to-ceiling windows and quiet morning light. A place that reflects who I've become, not who I was trying to please. There's a small bookshelf by the kitchen window. On it, I keep framed quotes from women who changed my life from a distance, writers, scholars, friends. But in the center sits a photo. Not of my family, not of Samantha, but of me. 18 years old. Graduation cap. Alone on a bus bench. I keep it there not out of bitterness, but as a reminder that even when I had no one cheering for me, I kept going. I keep that photo there for every version of me who thought being good meant being obedient. For every Haley who thought saying no would mean being unloved. And for every woman who's ever chosen her own sanity over someone else's comfort. One day, months after I've settled into my new life, I receive a letter in the mail. A simple white envelope. No return address. Inside is a note. Just a few lines. I hope one day you'll forgive me. I did what I thought was right for my child. I didn't realize I was destroying the other one in the process. Mom. I read it once. Twice. Then I fold it neatly and place it in a box labeled closure. Because I can appreciate the gesture without reopening the door. And that's the difference between who I was and who I am now. I don't confuse apologies with invitations. People ask me if I still talk to Samantha. The answer is simple, no. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm no longer available for relationships that only work when I'm quiet, when I'm convenient, when I'm paying. I've made peace with that. Not every wound deserves a reunion. Some just deserve distance. And that, too, is healing. Last month, I stood on a stage in front of 500 young women at a leadership summit. It was my first time speaking in person since the lawsuit, since the articles, since everything. I told them my story. Not just the betrayal, but the rebuilding. I told them how I once thought being a good daughter meant giving until it hurt. And how I realized that being a whole woman meant finally choosing myself. When I finished, the room stood. Not for me, really. But for every one of them who saw themselves in the story and finally knew they weren't alone. A girl in the front row came up to me after. She was about 19. She said, "I didn't know you were allowed to walk away from your family." I looked her right in the eyes. And I said, "You're allowed to walk away from anything that asks you to betray yourself to stay." I don't know what the future holds for my family. I don't know if my parents will ever truly understand what they did. Or if Samantha will ever see beyond her version of the story. And maybe that's okay. Because my peace doesn't depend on theirs. It's not something they can sue for. Or take. Or twist. It's mine. Fully. Finally. And as I close the door on this chapter, I don't slam it. I just walk forward. No looking back. Because I no longer need to be the good daughter. I just need to be me.